Hi, my name is Andrew Jackson, and I'm the elected chief for Kihuasini Youth Council. Today I'm going to be interviewing Charles Wood. He's a knowledge keeper and the first administrator for Sad Lake, established in 1968. Me and my fellow students formulated some questions, hoping you would guide us through some of them and help us. We made an offering to some tobacco here for.
Okay, thank you.
First question: What do the elders and knowledge holders like you have to tell us young people about the day before treaty, and what were our nations like, and how did we govern ourselves, and why did we do it that way?
At that time, it is my belief that our people lived freely wherever they wanted, and it was the intention of the federal government to try and get as much control as they can. So one of the ways that they arrived at was to enter into treaty with our forefathers. Before that, what they were doing in the States and the rest of Turtle Island was that they would go to war to gain control of their land and their resources. So here in Canada, they took a different approach, and the approach was to enter into treaties. Now, the elders have indicated that it was a peace treaty to live in harmony back then, but that's where I think that the understanding and interpretation of treaty, was quite different from our people and the visitors. It is my belief that it took a long time for our people to agree to the signing of treaty. What may have turned them was when Commissioner Morris told them that they would be allowed to live as they always have, living off the land, etc. And based on that information, they agreed to sign the treaty.
In the days after treaty, what may have happened to our way of life as Nehio people?
The day after treaty, most of us were not around, of course, so it's hard to say it one way or the other. But what may have happened was the people were put on reservations, and here there's a different understanding. Under treaty, the government, thought that they had total and absolute control of all the lands, including our forefathers. But the statement that drove their mind at the time, I think, was Morrison's word: "You will be allowed to continue the way that you always have." But that did not occur. Right away, they started doing things like the reservations, for instance. Our ancestors believed that it was still their land, but it wasn't the case. The written text says that the land is held in trust for indigenous people. That's not an ownership. So they applied all their policies and guidelines as to how our people would live, and their coming and going was always under control, even to the point where the government took control of who should be a member. The Indian Act did that.
Why did the government push the Indian Act on us if we were supposed to live without interference after treaty making?
Well, we need to understand the purpose and intent of treaty. And this was addressed by our people at the time of the Indian Association of Alberta. Their question was, are the numbered treaties in Canada international in scope? And they went to England. And I think it's common knowledge now, the adjudication of Lord Denning and the Privy Council in London, England, adjudicated that the numbered treaties in Canada are international in scope. Now, international treaties can only be entered into by sovereign nations. So that means we were sovereign, and they, of course, as represented by English people in England, you know, they entered into treaty.
What do people mean when they say spirit and intent of treaty?
Spirit and intent of treaty. I think the understanding and interpretation of that term is quite different from one group to the next. Spirit and intent. My understanding of the spirit and intent is that our people have tried to live by the terms of those, the terms. They could hunt anywhere. They could move around wherever they wanted to go. But that did not happen. Even in this day now, there's very limited places where our people can hunt and fish and trap. Even the gathering of their medicines, our medicines and berries and stuff like that, you can't go anywhere now. So it comes back to the matter of reservations. I think if we are to an attempt to understand it, reservations, in my opinion, are open custody institutions where we had to get a permit to leave the reserve, and we had to get a permit to sell anything that we may have produced. So all of those restrictions, were placed on us when we were moved on the reserve.
What did taking over tribal administration mean for us, and how did it change the impact of the Indian Act?
I think it was an attempt by our leaders of the day to try and improve, what was happening on the reserve. They felt that the Department of Indian Affairs, were too much in control of anything and everything on the reserve. I mentioned membership, but also lands and all the other things, too much control. And a lot of our elderly people are surprised when they are served with the understanding of membership into the band to be under the absolute control of the Minister of Indian Affairs. That means that the Indian Affairs person, whomever he or she is, can decide whether or not you're a treaty Indian, a status Indian, and so on. We don't have any jurisdiction on that. So we need to correct that.
What do we young people have to do to ensure the spirit and intent of treaty continues? How do we become more knowledgeable about our history as peoples?
A very important question, in my humble opinion. I think I would preface by saying that we have to unlearn what we have learned. We have to learn as much as possible about our history by speaking with elders, their oral memory of it and their blood memory of our way of life prior to treaty and even shortly after the treaty. We need to learn that. And we have to learn, I think, how our people lived. People may believe that our ancestors had no laws, no policies before treaty, but I guarantee you they had a way of life because they lived in this country. They knew how to live in harmony with Mother Nature and with each other. And that's not evident right now, even in our community here, where different factions have come onto our lives to create divisions. And I don't think I need to expound on that, what I'm talking about. So we have to live in harmony with each other. And our educational system, by the way, and I think that the young people should go towards that way. How to address the education as being taught to our people. Right now, the present educational system teaches and helps the young people in only one area, and that's how to make money. But I think that the indigenous people, us people, we have a role and responsibility to pass on our understanding and interpretation of treaty, and that one of them, the important lesson, is to live in harmony. Live in harmony with each other, to live in harmony with Mother Nature, and to live in harmony with anything and everything around us. Once we get there, I think the lives of our community and the rest of this province and Canada and the world might improve.
Number 7, what message do you have for young people about the roles and responsibilities that come with being a treaty person in Nsquapuan today?
Well, I think that we need to go back to learn from elders. The elders have said, "Mamo kamatok," means work together, and I don't think we're doing that. And also, the how we can do it is to relearn, I guess, the 7 sacred teachings that have been passed on to us. It's still evident today. And I'm making specific reference to the 7 sacred teachings like respect, truth, honesty, wisdom, courage, love, and humility. If we can walk that line, I think that, number 1, let's go with respect. If you understand and live the life of respect, do you think that our young people would get involved in all the negative activities? No, they wouldn't. They would respect the gift of life, their bodies and stuff like that, and to live accordingly. And they would pass that on from one person to the next, So we have to learn our way, I believe, for us to improve in our daily walk. And to take and accept the responsibility for walking that road individually and as families and as a community.
What does it mean to be living treaty?
Well, I think that we have answered some of that already by unlearning what we have learned and to relearn, our way and to live it fully. Under treaties, with the promises, that's been given to us, I don't know if we're doing justice by it, because we abuse, in a lot of instances, the significance of treaty. Let me use just one: education. The government is supposed to provide monies for us, but there's only limited monies. So I think that as a people, as a community, as individuals, we need to take and accept the responsibility to walk as far as we can along that road, to educate ourselves. And again, to go to the 7 sacred teachings to ensure that we walk with them in the best way that we know how.
What advice do you have for any young person today that may want to become a nation leader in the years to come?
Well, I think that we have to learn who we are, what we are, and to unlearn what we have learned to some extent. Now, I don't think that we should unlearn totally, but there was an advice that was given to me by a young person like yourself. We need to take the best of both worlds. The white world, the visitors' world, and our world. So I think that we can find the solution to that. I think that we will be on the road to recovery as a people and as humanity. Things that we need to relearn is how our people lived, and in their selection of leaders, I can only guess that they took it upon themselves to look at the total members. Who was a person that lived a good lifestyle, looked after the family, looked after what he or she had, and to respect the children, respect each other, and so on. And that, I think that what we're doing right now is broken away from that. Right now, in our election process, we normally go, it's kind of a popularity contest, the election code that we are under. I think that we can do a lot better than that, by selecting, a good role model and a person that knows what we are up against, and to work, a person that can bring people together to work together. That's, I believe, would be a good start.
How would the government have the right to abolish the Indian Act?
Well, I think the government of Canada can abolish that act without even consulting the First Nations of this country. It is their act.
But do you have any last messages for the nation or any of the youth?
Well, I do not think I can emphasize enough, the responsibility that each and every one of us have. Number one, it starts with taking and accepting the responsibility for our own walk. Taking and accepting the responsibility for the walk of our family and the walk of our community. This is our home. Whatever happens in there, it's our responsibility to make it go right, or if we don't do anything on it, we are as much as fault. So we have to work together, to make the best of what we have today.